Okay, so we're going to weave a medley of chest openers, rib releases, and some back easers in the first kind of segment of the session. So to prep yourself, you got some props. You got a wall space, you got a blanket that's rolled at the base, a bolster lengthwise, and a blanket at the back, and a belt that's connected. That's a good start kind of package of props. Okay. Have your belt to the side so it's an easy reach, and have your sandbag right next to you. I would avoid putting it on before you get into the shape that's going to kind of shift your upper respiratory tree. I like to say that word. It just makes me feel like I'm doing good stuff for my breathing muscles. So with this blanket roll, I'm going to step to the other side of it. I'm going to sit on the edge of my bolster, and my calves are apparently going to rest on that roll. It looks like they think they're going to do that. So when I lower back, I want to kind of get the ribs to do the reaching. I know we use our legs and our arms and we kind of try to effort a lot, but as we sink back, our rear muscles, right, our sitting bones are going to kind of slant under, and you can use your hands, right? Use things that will help you kind of brace yourself. And then as I guide back, my shoulder blades are still up on my bolster, and I'm going to continue back so my head lands on the blanket. Now, first things first, right? If the neck feels like it's gripping up a lot, then you might find you have to bend the knees, put the feet on the floor, and take some time to ease up this whole rib kind of revolution, right? So I think this is kind of a good rib revolution pose. If you start sliding back a lot, then you want to scoot back down towards the blanket roll, right? So it's probably not really in your interest to get up and down, up and down. So use your feet and your elbows maybe to kind of scoot yourself again to that base of the bolster, and you can feel lifted at the chest. If it feels as if, oh, I'm just too up on my bolster, that's what we want. That's exactly what you want, is to feel like it's pushing the back space to open up the ribs. Okay. Sand is an option. I love the sand on the tops of the thighs, the thigh lids. I also like sand sometimes on my ribs, but I know what needs the help is the psoas and the hip hinge. Okay. So feel the relationship of the front space, just slowly kind of releasing. There's no rush. Blanket under your head, just at the corner at the occiput, so it's at the shelf at the back of my skull. And when your arms stretch open, they can go out to kind of almost a goalpost position. I like the energy of they just reach open. The armpit chest stretches. I have no idea what my arms look like right now. I just know that it feels the perfect balance of the core length, the chest open, and my head relaxing back. Okay, now as you center the breath, noticing where it centers. And of course, if you need to fuss around and make some shifts, I think the one area you want to focus on is that the shoulder blades are off the floor. I think that's the key, especially since it can help your shoulder joints a lot. This type of pose can be very useful for circulation in there that can get kind of just tightened up. You can be stressed. So find those areas of relative where it gets stressed, right? The breathing muscles, the heart, and just let flow happen there. The hands can relax. If the arms opening out this way is too much, you can always have them lower. They can be just down by the sides of the mat. But just feel the movement as we begin to kind of weave into this medley of front space opening. Take about 4 more rounds of breath. The feet relax. If you're not comfortable with how the blanket is under your calves, you can always scoot the blanket down. I think having something under the calves is really helpful here. And your feet can touch the wall, or if they're not, then they're not. So entering through that breath into the pose. You know, kind of study, a little self-study of lower abdominal around to the hip, right? That's all connected, right? Interestingly enough, there's a big connection there from lower belly to hip, okay? So when we do make a shift into weaving into the low back here, I want you to take these next few moments to move the sand away and walk the feet in towards your seat. So the soles of the feet are on the floor. You could bring the soles of the feet together, the knees out in a cobbler's pose, just to begin to weave into the hips. It's an option. It may not be easy for us to do that with our back muscles right now. But if the hips are available for that, bring the soles of the feet together, not the heels of the feet, right? The soles, so that you can bring energy through the leg pits and up into the groins. And if the knees motion out, if they kind of butterfly a bit, it's okay. We don't want to bounce, but you might feel them flutter a little bit up if it's kind of tense. And then you direct them to go with gravity. That's probably your best bet with this class, right? Go with gravity. So if you use the props to support you, try to let them negotiate the circulation on the terms of props, breath, shape. Bring the knees to point up, walk the feet in towards your seat. And now comes the exciting moment here. So I've got my bolster holding my chest up. I'm happy about that, but now I'm going to slide back a little bit. So you might find, okay, blanket's now really to my neck almost. So I'm going to walk the feet in and relax the knees. Don't try to stress out the knees by moving your feet too close to your seat. You're just going to push into your feet and you'll slide the upper back to the floor and turn your bolster across the mat. So it's across under the pelvis. And I'm going to scoot back up on top of the bolster with the back of my pelvis and negotiate the work with my quads, right? And my tailbone. And maybe this area can use some support, right? The quad area to help you get that lift. So bring the right knee in towards the chest, hold the back of the right thigh, and let the left leg stretch down. Okay. And the blanket could be welcome. You might decide I'm done with the blanket under my legs. So you can always kick it aside. I'm just going to leave it there. It will be a in and out support for other things. So alternate knee to chest. Doesn't mean you hold the right side only, but give a feel for the opposing reach of your back when your knee goes in, but also the opposite leg stretches through that hip flexor. So just get a feel of movement and how you style that movement when the knee comes in. You're trying to feel that relationship with the back kind of curling, like when you do cat pose, like it's definitely motioning back into stretching. Take a few more of these and just knee towards chest. Not competitive with yourself, how far you can get the knee in, but feeling that you want to practice in a layer like underneath your fullest stretch, just feeling how you abide in the fluidity in the body, right? Motion is lotion. Okay, and then both knees towards the center. They don't have to go to your chest. You're going to make sure that you feel like you can kind of roll a little side to side on the pelvis on the bolster. I feel like I need to still scoot a little bit down. So I want to feel like my seat is right on the edge of the bolster horizontally. So I feel like quite an arch in my back. And I'm going to add that blanket just under the set in my skull, not under my shoulders, and then get a belt. Okay. So acquire a belt, do any movements that you feel are kind of associated with this is going to be a good time, right? So rock and roll a bit. And then as you add your belt, just make sure it's connected, right? You want to have it buckled up. And you're going to scoop up your feet and take the legs to that lift. And the full reach is not going to be determined by your flexibility here. I want you to motion so that you've got it in a loop. And this is, I think, a little bit too big. So I'm going to tighten it up and then bring my feet out to a stance where I feel like, oh, I'm going to pivot myself if I can and come back. I hit myself in the eye too much, but I want you to have a wide reach, and your focus in the beginning is going to be, you're going to alternate moving the knees to bending and stretching to the side, okay? So when you move out to the side with the leg, you kind of warm up the inner leg, the leg pit, where there's a lot of lymph nodes at the very base, right to the pelvic floor, right? That's where that circulation needs to go. But kind of warm it up. So alternate. Now, if you feel like, okay, it's a little tricky, isn't it, to move around like that? You want to get a feel when you're moving the leg side to side, hopefully you won't hit a wall, that the heel draws towards the groin. Okay, so I'm not trying to get the heel, then it comes down to stay up very high. I want to move it towards the groin. So should I make the belt wider? I'm just going to be fine with this. I know it's stretching into my leg. I'm happy with the circulation. But then just come on up to the V. So just stretch it up. Now, some of us, this might not be a big stretch. It might feel rather easy. And I would say go for that. Don't make it like you're trying to get the legs in the widest reach. Focus on the basic good nature of this is to reverse the flow back to the heart. So you might bring your hands to your ribs or out to the sides in goalpost or straight back. And as you nurture the heart, and that could be a good thought, right? I mean, energize, the thoughts are energy. So even though we know this is happening science-wise, just feeling where that support goes back to the heart, moving the blood back to it, and letting it relax. Feel the lower belly guide into lifting and relaxing. Now, of course, you can do any of these inversions without the bolster, but the bolster is what makes it an inversion, right? The energetic of inversion. We could call it a mild inversion, maybe if we don't have the bolster, but it's helpful to kind of lift up the hips, stimulate that circulation in the pelvic floor, and the opposite of prolapse. Now, notice if your feet want to circle. I don't know if they want to, but give them a try of the movement trial for your feet. Your feet now have a movement trial. They can go out, they can go back in and turn. And using the motion from ankle, right? Isolate through the ankle so there's no turning in my knees, whatsoever. This would be something you would probably practice standing on your feet, right? Because it'd be hard to move them around. So as they're stepped on a lot, see if it is tiring on the ankle to do that much rotation, and just maybe shake out the legs, right? You're kind of just shaking it out and your feet are being held, so you don't have to worry about how much action goes with the feet. But as you bend the knees, grasp a hold of the belt and slide the feet together. And as you lower that left leg down, you're going to hold onto the belt now with the left hand, and the right leg has the belt. Okay, right foot has the belt. I'm going to cross the right leg to the left, and I'm going to stay with my leg on the blanket below just for right now. Just kind of feel how that goes for my coordination. But I think in your general method of care for the knee joint and the hip complex, you might prefer the bottom leg to bend, just to take it off the blanket and feel a little bit more ease in the hip. Okay. What I like about it is I can turn the left leg out, so I'm not with the heel down on the base leg, and I can still feel that fluidity into the right hip. So for me, as long as I'm not trying to hold my knee back from moving, I'm okay with that. So opening out through the right arm, feeling where your head rolls to the right, and just centering into where is it expansive, which is kind of a funny thought, centering where it's expansive. Okay, but giving it permission, the center of the body, to to motion out, not to be pushed in and, posturally rounded, feeling that open quality. Bending the right knee. And then with care, you're going to pull firm with the left hand on the belt. See if that can help bring you back to center. It's like your leg is on a leash here, right? So when you bring it back center, straight up, okay, flexing, left foot comes up, and then we just switch over, right leg goes down. Now, what might help you, those of us that are going to keep using the blanket, is to give your, hold onto the belt with the right hand now on the left foot. Give your bottom leg permission to just turn out. It doesn't have to be straight, heel down, pushing. Just let it turn out. And if you're too close to the wall, you might want to move away, meaning your lower leg, not the leg that's crossing. Sometimes you can't do much about that at times, but we want to keep it somewhat limited. So it's not like it's using all of gravity to turn you to the right. You can see I want my upper channels to be open to the sky. And that's in how you enhance that circulation to the vital organs, right? It creates that circulation blend into the waist, right below the rib cage. Feel the belly move with the breath. Come back to center by bending the left knee. Bring it back up, come into brain float. So first things first, you might get a sandbag, okay? And add it to the top of that right thigh. It might feel like you want to get the belt behind your head first, which is fine. But once you add that sand, you just slide it down to the thigh lid, and it might kind of turn into to turning and rolling to the inner leg. And that's okay, as long as you have the bulk of the sand at the top of the leg, right? You could kind of bulk that up. And then as you get your belt, and it's maybe still connected, I hope, just be sure that the buckle doesn't go behind your head, okay? So I loosen it up quite a bit. So I measure it. If the belt loop reaches to the crown of my head with my legs straight up in verticality, right, straight up, then that's pretty good. I like to have a little traction event going on. So when I lift my head up and I place the belt immediately behind it, then I want to let my head relax back into the belt. So feel the weight of your head resting into the belt. Arms can open out. Shoulders can center back. And just feel that awareness of traction through not only a leg, but also the thigh that's up on the bolster that's stretching straight down. So that thigh is likely going to turn out at the foot. You can feel the foot rotation. So usually my fix on that is I'll make sure the blanket's under my right leg, because you lodge the leg into it, it kind of holds it. And I move my right leg a little out to the right side so I don't turn the leg out as much. That's what I do. I just kind of slide it over to the edge. Hopefully I won't fall off the blanket. And then I purposely try to move the foot to turn in. That feels pretty good on the success in the quad on the right side. Now fill that center body. I'm assuming you are with breath, but kind of visualize how the rhythm of that breath is supporting your back. Resting back into the belt. If you don't prefer this version with your head being held by a belt, you can let your hands hold on to the belt and stretch back. That's also a good version too. I like this one. Yeah. But just getting traction at my neck is so rare that I will go with this. You take a few more breaths. You can always move your left foot a little bit. You can feel kind of how the reach of the sole of the foot is experiencing. You can then also dial into the calf, kind of draining out. It's kind of neat, the things we can do to support circulation in the body. Okay, now shift sides. If you want to move the sand, if you're using that on the belly, that might be a helpful motion. Some of us don't really want that. We'll put the sand on the bolster and then move it to the left thigh when you're ready. So I hold the back of my head, I hold the belt, I bend the left knee. Now, this whole movement with the knee angle is probably more important than we give our knee credit for. So when I come up with the right leg going up into the belt, then I shift the left leg down and I feel how that right leg bends a bit, the top leg. So feeling how it bends, how you can feel the foot pushing into the belt, how it responds into the hamstring. Okay, the more you think about it, the more interesting it gets or it doesn't. And then the sand goes onto that left thigh. If you had it packed up high at the top of the sand, right at the quad top, the quad peak, you might want to make sure it's about the same on the second side, right? At least you can really maximally focus here, right, on where your positions are, where your prop support is. If your bottom leg is really kind of flipped out, right, turning out, just move the whole leg a little over to the left. And then try to purposely turn the foot in a little bit. It's kind of fun. I mean, you've lived with these legs for a while, right? Or this body, and then every time you come to the occasion of a practice, you can work on restoring, right? It's a restorative, resetting practice. Restoring what you have. Okay, so your head leans back. And my hope is that on the second side, the neck feels about the same. It's the same neck. It's a different leg. So if the leg is shaky on one side over the other, try to find some relative calm here. It could mean you have to loosen up the belt. Most of us have one leg, a little longer than the other. So you probably are feeling different from one side to the next. So you might go, oh, I'm going to try to loosen it or tighten it. And there's no harm in just trying that out and feeling and going back to what feels best for you as well. As long as the load in the hamstring isn't so intolerant, right? So if my right hamstring feels like it's about ready to cramp or something, back off. It's not worth it. So if it's okay just as it is, your arms could be anywhere it's comfortable. Yeah, feeling where the weight of your head leans back. Should I move my head way back? Sometimes I like this one where I graze over, I just hover over the blanket. It just happens to be on that far back. I like to push the foot into it so I'm not hyperextending the knee. So for me, a little nano bend is helpful. And feeling my top foot not turning out, right? How about that? It's at the ball of the foot. Feel it kind of near your arch if that works really well. And feeling all the way up into your hip. And breathing a few more moments in this one. Now, when the hands reach to the belt behind you or in your hands, if it's already there, slide the belt off the back of your head. And then let's bend the right knee, take the belt off our foot, And then we're going to slide sand to the left and get a ball. Okay, knees to the chest. If you don't have a ball, you can use a block at its most narrow setting. This works pretty good. Okay. The ball's easy to hold on to, I think. It's not something you remark on trying to grip as much as the block. And then just let the knees go side to side. If you feel like, wait a minute, I need to just hold it center for a few seconds with the ball, no problem. But when you're motioning, you're going to add in that reach through the pelvi, kind of feel how it moves across. I like to kind of jab my elbows into the ground so I can really work that lower skill through my waist, my pelvis, right? The muscles that hold pelvis and torso together, and then feeling that movement, because we're going to go into a side sage pose next. So I want you to get this rib area, the lower rib zone, you know, at its prime right heat. So you are warming it up. This is our natural way of warming. Okay. It's in a little bit of a rotunda, huh? The turnstile. Okay. Now, when you come back in towards the center, take the ball out and bring the knees to the left and roll out of the inversions. Okay, so come on up, have a bolster to the center. I think it's been there all along, hasn't it? Okay, get your blanket that's at the base, and you want to just take it into a fold. So unroll it so it's in just an easy, whatever. I don't know if the blanket thinks this is an easy fold or not. Unlikely. Just stack them up behind your bolster and let there be a gap between the and the blanket. Okay, let's see. Mute somebody here. Is that me? Are you all hearing? Is that better? Mimi's frozen. Mimi, is that okay? Okay. All right. So what I want you to do is to have that bolster on the side. Let me know. Cynthia, can you hear me okay? We good? Okay. All right. I had some feedback there and I thought, oh no. Okay, things happen. So take the block and you're going to put it behind the blanket. So I would say one block is probably fine, but if you need to, just stack them up. Have a low block, have a high block on top of the low block. Push it over to the right side behind your blankets. And then you're going to lean in so that the bolster's under the ribs. Now, I was playing with this yesterday using like a blanket roll on the bolster, you know, so I got more height in my ribs. I just didn't find it good for my shoulders. But if you want to play with those things, I see it all the time in books, right, where you have more height here. The round bolster works perfect for that. Like, excellent. So if you have a round bolster, that's probably easiest. But if you're trying to anticipate getting more lift in the ribs, work towards how this the right arm at this point is creating this reach. Okay, so the right knee rests on the ball. If you use the ball under the knee, not everyone does. And this, you know, this wing, right? It's like the rib and the shoulder span is like this, its own wing that you're moving overhead. It's such good stuff. And if you're used to being in a class where you put a lot of sand on you, you know, work with the breath a little bit more definition here with the movement in the costals, the intercostals. So the hand is reaching overhead to a block near you. Remember, you can have the block low. You don't even have to use the block. Some people have the upper arm open towards the ceiling and roll on the back of your head. Should your head be on its side or on the back? It's up to you. Okay, it's up to your neck. If you can connect to the neck. Okay, take the moments here when you're reaching to support the spine in its natural curves. And let's just feel this, kind of live in this for several moments. Noticing where there's areas that can continue to stretch with gravity, right? I don't need to push my right torso. I can just lean into the bolster and let the stretch happen, just gently breathing. Remember, it's really a time investment right in these poses where you take the shape, you find what's comfortable enough. You might push the edge a bit, but see if you can coax into the shape with the breath. If anything feels uncomfortable, sharp shooting any sensation, you get out of it. But if you're feeling like it's maybe just a little tightness, if you can breathe through. Okay, now. Okay, so we've got the sides extension, side reaches. Okay, we're going to do kind of an in-between shape-shifting work. And I think we've maybe done this once before. I don't think I recall many times doing this shifting in between set, maybe once. Okay, so open up through the right arm towards the ceiling. If that's really kind of too spiky in the chest muscles, don't do it, right? You do what you can. And then feeling that there's some heat that's moving into that side, probably both sides. And then take the sand off. All right, we're gonna roll left, and we're gonna move our bolster off the mat. Okay, we're gonna move a blanket off too, so you only got one blanket under your head. And when you move onto your back, have a ball center of the knees. Now, the blanket under your head, let's see, I gotta move the stuff around a little bit. The blanket under your head should be the lowest, very lowest fold, right? It's just not very much, just a little bit, but do use something. Okay, now feet to the floor, ball center of knees. If it's not the most perfect support for the ball, you just keep moving it around till you can kind of hug into it. Kind of the knees hugging the ball is a really weird kind of attempt. So let's just practice with this phase. So my feet touch down, I lift the hips up. I like to kind of wiggle my toes and push through the ball of the feet and just kind of feel how I form my posture on my feet. Okay, that's kind of posture 101. Arms reach back overhead. Okay, now with that lift of the hips, with that in-breath, and then with the out-breath, let the spine lower. Now, I think with lots of practice, you'll find ways of being really curious about how you use your lower belly here, how you get the middle of the back behind the heart center, and then trailing all the way down the spine trail. Okay? And then come on up. We're on the spine trail now. Spine trailing, and then down. So just alternating bridge pose. Take a couple more cycles of these. And you can always kind of find your interpretation of when you lower down, maybe you pick up your feet and just really sensing where the back muscles respond, if they do at all. You can pick up the heels, you can pick up nothing, just your spine and you. Okay, now once the spine centers back down, we're going to bring the knees to your chest and then take the ball out. And let's take figure 4 with the right ankle to the left knee, cross it over. Ball goes to the upper outer left thigh. It's not under your rear, it's just to the side of the thigh. You can push it in. You want something to help you, so you're going to lean your knees to the left. Okay, you're going to reach up for the right knee. Right arm stretches back besides your head. It's falling figure 4. If you find, I don't want to have my figure 4 fall over, you don't have to. You can keep it centered here. That's okay. Sometimes a little rebounding is a curious mixture. Just come back through center. Feel the side of the left foot like you're sickling the left foot. And feel the belly get a little movement. Just coordination. is fun to do, but it's okay just to be in the shape and land for a few more breaths. And just feeling where that circulation is in the right hip. Now come back center. Visualize the focus first that your knee moves out on the right side. It just kind of reaches out with the range of motion of the figure 4 pose. Okay. Now when you switch sides, first things first. Take the ball out. Okay. Uncross through that right foot. Place the ball at the tailbone. Okay, between sides we are, right? Bring the soles of the feet towards each other, the knees out. Just try to feel well, for me, the balance is not that easy here. But soles of the feet are kind of pitched in. The knees move out and they're a little bit buoyant. They're not probably touching the ground by any means. But just feeling that you can move the hips a little side to side. I'm good with just trying to center. Like this is okay. I'm not gonna try to bounce around here. So the ball might feel like it's at your lower back. It doesn't have to be all the way to the tailbone because you want to find that natural arch, right? The ball's round. It definitely helps with in trying to get you to round 2, which is where we're at. We're at round 2. Okay, so right foot steps, left foot steps. Kind of do a little bit of a sacrum rocking side to side, kind of massaging into that lower basin of our back. Okay, and then push into your feet, lift up the bridge pose, take the ball over to the right upper outer thigh, left ankle to right knee, cross it over, knee shift to the right. So my right foot relaxes, so my bottom foot is not on the sole, it's on the side as my right hand holds the left knee and the left arm stretches back. Okay, so just get that feel for integrating into our back space, this last kind of weave of shapes. We're on a pathway to sage pose again, but I want you to get a little feel of how you can kind of balance. Okay, here we go. All right, so now when you come back in through center, okay, take the ball out, let the legs stretch straight down, and then I want you just to rock the heels. So do a little bit of heel rock. So as you reach through the heels, alternate that pulse through the feet. Okay, so heel rock would be my heels pressed down, I just flutter my feet down and up, right? So I might feel the weight into my, right at the center line where I feel not my sitting bones, but right at the sacroiliac joint area. Okay, walk the feet in, hug your knees in, and I would say roll easily to the right side. Be careful. As you roll to the right, you're going to take your bolster, take it up on your mat, or not up, but slide it on your mat. It's not that big of a deal. And then get your blankets. And I want you to take a roll so that you've got, not a roll, but a fold. You got a good stack of them. And it might be a different feel from what you did last side sage because we did that in between work. I'm hoping it's a good thing. So we can only try to create somewhat new recipes. Okay. So when we lean into this right hip, we've got a ball on the inside of the left knee and a sandbag. Now, what I notice is when I start leaning in, sometimes my bolster gets tilted. It just gets turned. So I've got to kind of let the bolster know I'm in charge here. So lean into it with the ribs. Take the sand onto that left side. It's very good, right, for us to work on this rib kind of inflating, expanding. If you've got sand on the ribs and you like that weight training for your breathing muscles, that's fine too. But the right arm is between the bolster and the blankets, and the left hand reaches overhead to the block. Okay. Now, when you're in the reach, feel the weight into that right hip. Okay. Feel the reach to that left arm. And if it's a little kind of stuck in some parts of the shoulder joint, right, you might just take time. You don't have to force touching down with the hand. You might create some movements like the elbow reaching around. Right? You kind of forget about these spaces in between the large things we see, like an arm, a leg, a foot, the little intricate motions in the rotator cuff. It can get really stuck. So just do movement. It doesn't have to be I hold onto my block and I stay. And movement is okay. The sand will get you kind of still in some places, right? Instilling that weight bearing into the hip. Now with the weight of your head resting on the blankets, breathe. And now take the opportunity to select the opposing reach of the arm and the hip right there. You know, it's interesting as the arm can be like this pointed object, right? And the hip does connect to an object that points like a leg and a foot. But this hip area, to select that reach requires your back muscles to be mobile and flexible. It's a lot. So just do the best that you can to feel yourself kind of across the middle, stretching over that bolster. And then lower the left hand down to the sand if you have it, move it off your hip, roll to the right, and then let's come around to our bolster. Okay, so our bolster is going to be under us. And what I think would be helpful here is assuming we all have knees that need some support and cushion. Okay, I'm going to add a blanket under mine. You don't have to, but you can. And I want you to have your bolster on top of your blanket. Okay, so you just put it on there so it's high. Now, when I stretch forward with the arms, I'm going to let my hips move a little side to side. But is it your hips moving or is it your ribs and hips? Okay, so after all that side reach that we had in the rib cage and the hips, you know, they kind of feel like they're in a cage too sometimes. So get them to motion, okay? And then bring your hands under your shoulders and come into cat pose. If you're touching the wall with your feet, that kind of feels good sometimes. So cat would be rounding chin to chest. And then as you alternate, feel the chest stretch forward. Okay, just a little different wave of movement in our pelvis than we've been doing this whole class. So feel where your palms press open. Feel the design of the arch. Okay, now as we are in a living body of movement, right? It's not like you hold the arch and then never leave it. You do have the ability to combine breath with movement. Okay, walk your hands to the right side like you're crawling, but the upper body is doing the movement to the right side, not the hips. I'm not like pushing my hips over to the right. I'm moving just my arms to the right side. So what I'd like is sometimes to have my left hand on the bolster, but sometimes that feels too much pressure on the lower wrist. So your head can lean to the arm, but it's only a few more seconds. And then walk on up over the bolster to the other side. Okay, so feel how the hips slant to the back right corner. Feel your head lean into the arm. Breathing. It only helps. Okay, now as you come back through center, hands pressing, toes undering, and then lifting up the hips into a downward dog with the heels hopefully at a wall. That would be nice. So my heels are lifted up and my chest is stretching through. And it is a bit of energy in the arms. Okay. So what I want us to kind of offer here for the leg parts is to feel the knees bend. Okay. Push back, let the knees bend and kind of feel a little bit of bounce through the legs. Lower down through the knees, and let's take the bolster across the mat next to your thighs. So we're going to lean into it. Now, if it's a bit much on the wrist, what do? You can turn the hands out, right? You can put your hands on blocks, which is actually surprisingly makes it easier. And when you arch through the spine, door number 1 would be here, just creating that natural field of movement through the rib cage, forward and up. And door number 2 would be elbows on the ground. So if this feels like, too much for right now, just put your elbows down. You can always take a break anyway. Bring your forearms down to the floor and take Sphinx pose and feel that arch through the back. Okay. And this is probably a good lead up to where we're going with the quads. So if your hands are pushing down right now, you may as well come down. You might as well go down to your forearms so that you can feel the energy of the thighs resting down into the knees. And these are a peculiar thing for sure. But when I rest down into my knees, I'm going to relax my rear muscles, but still feel the wall with my feet. Okay. Now, bending the knees a little more, just bring the feet to lift up. We're not going to hold our feet with our hands or anything, but I want you to feel now how you're arching through the rib cage. It's different if I let my feet go back down. I can kind of push into the wall, and then I bring my feet up. A little bit different energy in the thighs, but it's doable. Okay, so now as you reach the legs back down, we're going to slide the hands in. We're going to push into the palms, arch the spine, chest up, and then come back to table and turn your bolster lengthwise and take a step forward with the right foot. In fact, let's do this. Let's have our blocks if we need them. Now, if you decide I don't need blocks right now, that's up to you. But I want you to turn your bolster across the mat and then walk your right foot into center. But feel if you can get your left thigh on the bolster, okay? So let it lean in. Now, if you don't like your left knee on the ground at all, you can lift it up, just push into your foot, lift the left knee up. You can shift your right foot a little bit farther forward so that the left thigh lands into the bolster. Anyone feel the left quad stretch a little bit? There's a little bit of reach. Okay. So just finding where that range is through the hip flexor. Oh, my hip. Okay. So ribs move a little bit forward and up. Okay, blocks might have to go a little closer to your bolster. You might find, that's really affects my kind of hip health, right? It feels like, I got a little bit more boost in my hip. We can only use a hip boost. Okay. Toes under left foot. Now walk the right foot in so you don't lose your balance here. Step the left foot forward. Got it. Okay, take a forward fold of choice, which for me is going to be feet a little wider than hips distance, just a little bit. I like to hinge at my hips strongly, so I'm not focusing on rounding my back. So bend the knees, stretching out my back. So blocks can go forward. What I'm loving lately is that when I take a forward fold, bending my knees keeps my back long. Right, so if I straighten my legs and then I just kind of flop over, okay, well, that's for some people. But bending the knees might give you a little bit more strength load into your everything. Let's just say everything. How about that? An answer for everything. All right, blocks come back, right foot steps back. And then as I start to aim towards my lunging, I'm lucky on this side, I'm already up, okay? And if you feel like, "Oh, I want to do a wide stance, go for it. If you feel like, you like dog pose, but it hurts your wrists, then this would be a good moment right now to turn to the right, take your blocks if you want, hands on them, and take a wide stance. So it's a wide downward dog. It kind of flushes out. It's an inversion. That's the benefit you get, is the inversion for the heart and the brain. But as we transfer that blood flow back towards the heart, the brain, yeah, you can let your head nod. You already have the hips in their full range here. Yeah, and this is a good warm up if you do pigeon, right? You want this back area to kind of open up completely on each side, balance before we go one side to the next. Okay, now turn back to left foot, turn back forward to the left foot. So the right leg is stretching behind you to the wall. And then as your knee lowers down, push into your foot, arch through the spine. Keep it really simple. Like, what is my aim here? It's to benefit the circulation into my hip, into my back muscles, my abdominals. Again, this is everything, right? This one is doing it all, because it's not only flexibility, but it's that coordination of moving in our pelvis and also using our upper body. Okay, so we are going to lead into a pigeon pose, and you might be like, I'm not. Okay, so I'll demo coming into pigeon, and if you're like doing something different with it, I'll show a modification I think would work, and you might have others too. But you can feel that reach of the right thigh stretching forward, the right thigh behind you. You can feel that motion. It's kind of in motion, right, the whole time. Like, it might be able to go a little bit more, but gosh, there's a lot of resistance in it. So as you move your blocks forward, okay, I would say move the hips back a little bit. Don't shock the quad here. Walk the left foot over to the right side, left foot to right, knees open on the left side, and then you lower down to pigeon. If pigeon goes well, right? So if you find, well, I'm not going to do that. So if you're not, it'll be the same appearance. You just won't be pushing on the knee. So this is pigeon, right? You can lower down onto your forearms. You can bring your palms together and head downwards. Okay. Now those of us that are going to sit on the bolster but not go into that cross band with the knee, just take a seat on your bolster. Okay. Place a block in front of you at the lowest setting and place that left foot on top. So feel how there's that external rotation in that left hip. The knee is open on the right side. And I think this one would be safest if you have a ball or a block under the right knee. Okay. Just because there's this like kind of basket feel for the pelvis, even more so than the pigeon. It's a different kind of form of a hip, like a pelvic basin, I think. It's a little different looking. So this knee is lifting up anyway, the foot on the block. So if I have the other knee lifted, I'm pretty happy. So lean forward. Caution if it doesn't feel right in your knee, the knee that's on the ground, you might need to move that foot a little further forward or move it out. No problem. You can always reach it out to the right. Take a few more breaths here. Feel where the back is in its natural curves. Just patience. Now come on up. Those of us in pigeon pose are going to shift to our right knee. So if your left leg is in that forward motion, walk your hands back to the leg. And then swing your weight on the left hip and then over to the right. Right, knee forward and out to the right side. And the left leg stretches back. You kind of break dance your way into that second side. And those of us in our seated pigeon are going to place our right foot on the block and situate our sitting bones and put a ball under the left knee. That feels pretty helpful. Yeah, and perhaps one interesting part of the seated pigeon variation is the inner leg kind of emphasis, right? I mean, they're both inner leg emphasized, but one is good in a way. The pigeon's good because of that circulation into the lymph nodes. It's really compressing. So when I'm here on this one, I want to try to keep lifting my chest, letting my right knee just stay right where it's at. I don't want to push it down, and just kind of steep into the leg pits. It's like marinating. Okay. So the rib cage is reaching. The breath is in balance. And the spine might be, you know, a little bit in, you might feel like you're not being sensitive to it because it's not getting a lot of motion around it, but soon enough it will. So yeah, we're using the spine area right now, or the muscles along the spine to be strengthened, right? When we're in this forward motion, especially the seated one. The pigeon pose the opposite way, knee open on the ground, is going to feel like you're really arching through your back. So let's kind of make our way towards seated up. Okay, if you're in pigeon here, right knee out, you're going to stretch the left leg forward and come on up. Okay, and then let's move ourselves closest to the wall. So that's a new thing to do, is to put my blanket halfway under my bolster and have like a tipped bolster. Have you ever tried that for seated poses? It's actually a pretty good idea. When I think of that to this moment, huh? Okay. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. I've never seen that, so I have to say I shouldn't. Okay, so be close enough to the wall you can touch it. Like just touch it. Doesn't need to be like your elbow can hit it, just that you can reach it. All right, so first things first, let's have our left leg stretch out to the side about to 11 o'clock on the left side, nothing excessive on the hip joint. And then put a ball under the knee. Okay, if you don't have a ball, use a block, but place the block so it would be, I'm just showing on the right side because it's closer, it would be above the knee. I don't want to jab my knee with a block, but it would be above it. Some people prefer this, I think, too. Okay, so now when the right leg is bending, I'm trying to keep this kind of V, like this width with the hips. Then I'm going to turn my right thigh out, my knee opens out, and I put a block under the thigh. So it's under the IT band here on that right side, and I just let the thigh rest on it. Okay, now sandbag goes onto the right thigh, upper like a hip hugger, and we're going to do just a brief seated field review. So right hand back to the wall, and find that rotation with the undercurrent here. So we're going to kind of feel like, imagine like your right rib cage, it's not just getting pushed to the right and back, but it kind of rotates and the ribs flare up, right? So I can visualize that. I don't know if I'm doing that, but my left hand holds the right knee or above my knee or below, if that feels better for you. Okay. And then let your right elbow bend. Okay. So your hands can kind of spider the fingers out a little bit and let your head just turn to the right. Okay. The more you try to rotate your head, the more challenging it might be to get the ribs to lift, but just feel what there's a good balance for you. It might even end up that your head tilts to your shoulder. Okay. But just feel a few breaths here. Feel if the breath goes horizontal, kind of around the rib zone, maybe not horizontal, but kind of circular in the ribs, or if it just goes up and down. Right. I find it goes up and down, but I have to feel kind of the expansiveness in the ribs. That's hard to do with nose breathing, I think, but you can attempt it. Okay, right shoulder getting tired, so we come back center. We just bring our hands to the knees and we roll the shoulders facing away from the wall, away so that your eyes could close, and shrug the shoulders back and down. Take a deep breath in, shoulders up. Exhale down. Inhale, shoulders up. And down for 2. That means shoulders down for 2. Okay. Switch the sides, right leg out, left leg in. Get rid of that sand on the right thigh, over the left, ball under the left knee. If you need some support, actually, ball under right knee. Okay, block under left knee. And so as you're turning, so the right leg reaches out. So I'm just seated away from the wall. I'm going to be able to touch the wall. Right leg is out. And as I start to turn, I'm isolating in the rib cage. So I want to feel like navel forward. Yes. Turning to the left. Right hand to left knee. Right leg reaches out. Left hand touches the wall. Okay, now instead of trying to feel like I need to look at the wall and turn myself all the way around to it, I'm feeling like, well, there's always opportunity on this one. And probably the richest source of support would be I breathe in, I feel the chest lift up and inflate my rib spaces. And as I out breath, I might turn a little to the left, but if your arm is already feeling fried, then you're probably trying to turn too much, right? So what you might do is even put your left hand on your left shoulder and just hold that and feel if you can turn using your breathing muscles, like using your costals. Right? On the exhale, you turn. So hand at the wall, this can be kind of forceful. I'll admit it. I felt last night I was feeling a little tried. It was a little hard on my shoulder. So feel what you can do. Maybe your hand goes lower. All right, that's kind of cool. I like that. I like it better than trying to go to here because part of my rotator cuff, I can feel bicep tendon. I can feel areas that I don't really want to inflame. It doesn't do me any good. I'm trying to work on a twist, which is what's good for a twist, but focusing on elasticity and also the joints, but also the organs. Yeah. So take a few moments as you're turning, breathe. It only helps. You relax the touch to the wall first. Come back center, shoulders shrugging. And maybe this time when you're forward, just to bring the soles of the feet back together and the knees out and the sand on the feet, okay? And let the knees rest open so you can move the ball away. It doesn't work very well anyway if it's that low. The knees are going to be up and lift up through the chest. Bring the right arm over the left, intertwine the arms, and lift the elbows up in eagle pose, okay? You can lean forward. I don't do a lot of forward bends, right? Because I'm trying to keep strong in my back and my spine and my hips. But if you can keep the knees out and the arch of the spine, good for us, right? This is still healthy. Come back up. Now I'm going to switch it. So uncross the right arm, bring the left arm over, like you're hooking the inner elbow or you're giving yourself a big hug. And then you intertwine through the arms. The palms might be to each other. They might be like this, like you got T-Rex arms, okay? But as you lean forward, you span open the back. Okay, because we're about ready to roll the glutes. So you want this back space to feel like it's kind of opening through. Then we'll go to the glutes. Come up with the elbows, out with the elbows both, and then take the sand away, and then come down off of your bolster, and let's move it over to the right side of our mat. So turn, I like to face to the wall. You might be like facing away, but we are going to go legs up in a bit. So you might want to face away from the wall right now. No, sorry, you're facing to the wall. Okay, that's what we're doing. So bolster is to the right side of the mat. Get your ball and have a blanket under your head that's probably going to be a good height. So this isn't bridge pose, right? So this is that we want to be able to push into the ball. So I want my neck to be like not trying to do anything. It's just passive. Okay. So head on blanket, ball to the left rib, weight on that left rear. So can you kind of find, okay, I got a left rear, I'm gonna put weight onto it, onto the ball. So the ball has that ability to push into the tissues, and you're trying to glide across. So you can have your hands where they're relaxing, and they could be out to the sides, they could be on your ribs, they could be down by your hips. Some people like to be kind of close to where the position's moving out of the hips. So if you nudge into the hips and you're motioning through the glutes, you want to get a feeling of the weight on the feet to help you negotiate movement. I find it kind of interesting that the feet kind of steer the ship on this one. Doesn't have to be both feet at the same time steering it, but the right foot can push a little more when you're massaging into the left glute, and the left foot kind of just skims the surface of the ground. And we're trying to become better massage therapists on our glutes right now. We're trying to refine the skill. Okay. Now, even if you're just nudging against the border of the glute muscle right to the hip, right on the medius, right glute medius area, right on the border, and then just gently lower your right rear down, knees tilt to the right like you're doing a windshield wiper. Take the ball away from that left rear, bring the knees back center, and then move the ball to the right rear, and knees go left. This is key. Ball touches my right rear, and then I just come up with the knee center, and then I just mount up on the ball and glide across. So use that left foot to be kind of the dominant foot to help you steer into your glute. I mean, it's behind you all the time, your glute, but it is a super powerhouse. So it's nice to give them a little bit of soothing and comfort. They're just so active, just like your feet get stepped on all the time. Your glutes are acting all the time. They act up. I guess they get sat on or sit on. What would be the proper way to say that? The feet get stepped on. The glutes get, would be sat on? Seated upon. Okay, so feel where the spine is in central station. It doesn't have much to do to hold it together. Okay, now let your weight tilt left, knee center, move the knees over towards the right. Now our whole fair bolster's over on the right side. Maybe you move it there now. But I like this instruction where you have your feet centered, you're kind of just on your back, feet about hips distance. You're gonna lift up your rear and move it to the left, and then right knee relaxes, left leg up on the bolster, okay? Ball can go to the sacrum area or not. It's not that big of a deal with the ball here. And then if you have a sandbag, maybe you put it on the outer left hip, perhaps. Okay, so I like that cue of pushing into my feet, move my hips over this week. Left arm is open and feeling where, oh, where in the waist am I turning? Where's my waist turning? Where's my head rolling left? It all affects it, right? The bottom leg has to be bendy, the leg on the floor. Not too much and not too little. And once you find that perfect twist pattern, breathe slow. Now moving the ball, then the sand, and then I would just switch sides, not spend too much energy on in between shapes. Maybe the sand is on the side or on your torso, lower belly. Move the bolster to the left. I again like that idea of feet press, lift my hips and move them to the right. And then left knee bends, right leg swings over to the bolster. Seems like a really responsive support for my ribs, my back. Works really good. Okay, So ball maybe at the sacrum area, and then you can just gently glide. And the sand is an option. It really isn't for everybody. Some people find the sand works great to influence being in a shape for a while, kind of getting grounded. Some people find that it feels like it's more stretch. It's certainly weight onto the body for the bones, so we know that. But just feel where your head maybe rolls to the right leg is reaching to the left. And just feeling where you center through the rib cage. Breathing. Now feeling how the hips are in this crossing kind of feel, like one hip is lifting and reaching, one hip is being pressed into. So we want to find some really some symmetry towards the final spinal here. So this isn't symmetrical, this one, right? So we move the ball, and if you want to be in it longer, you can. There's no pose police. So if you want to stay in your pose, stay with it. But we'll move the sand off for me, and I'm going to roll to the left, and then take a bolster or folded blanket to the base of the wall. Okay, this I think is important, that you have the bolster right up against the wall, or you have a folded blanket. It would be the same thing. I could use just my blanket like this against the wall. Okay, so that's if it just feels more comfortable. Some people have all the flexibility in the world, but it just feels better with a blanket or two. Okay. So I got my blanket now, also another one if I'm using two, in the middle of my mat, probably closer to the wall than you think. Make sure you got all the warmth that you need in your environment, right? So if you need to turn up some heat or anything, this is a good time. You're going to move your hip over to the side of the blanket or the bolster, and you're at the wall, so your rear is close. And you're going to roll on the shoulder to come upside down. Now, another thing you might have is my pillow. If you're already upside down, like, how do I get that? But if you have one, you're going to use that. But if you have your blanket under your head, let's say you decide, some people put the blanket over I've seen this too, right? Over their forehead to their eyes. I have this little tent overhead. I've seen that to be kind of nice. So if that works for you and you love that, you can try that too. Okay. As long as you don't put the blanket over your nose or anything, right? That would be okay. So that's an option to make kind of this curtain of darkness. And for our nervous system to settle, that's helpful. But, it's not like it has to be. Some people even feel more rested after a good restorative class, even versus like a night of sleep, and that's usually in the dark space. So finding where the arch is, this one feels really good. Sometimes I go in this pose and I'm not quite as satisfied. So you might want to feel, what is satisfaction? The sacroiliac area, so you can feel the base of the spine. I love the cue, press the tailbone into the bolster or the blanket for legs upside down. I think it's a helpful cue. Sometimes I arch the back too much to do that, so I have to feel tailbone. Okay, that's an anchor for ourselves. We got a tail. And then we can feel the ribs fill up and let the weight of our head relax onto the blanket. Now, if you have other props you want to use, other blankets or anything over you, that's perfect. But as we naturally let the arms relax, either resting on your breathing muscles, just let gravity assist in the process of draining, right? That lymph drain towards the collarbones. And if the arch at the neck is too much, not relaxing, you might nod your head a little side to side till you feel like the brainstem is resting and stretching into the neck. Filter through the nose and out through the mouth. And if you can fine tune at the end of this pose where the circulation is very busy, it's at the groins and the leg pits. So that's where there's so many lymph nodes, right up at that base pelvic floor. And it definitely, with the sand, it kind of speed up that process of moving that. And we don't have a lymphatic pump, right? The only way we can work the what is it, the 70 pints, right, of lymph fluid in the body is through yoga poses, inversions, exercise, right? Moving, walking, it all helps. You have to actually do it. So feeling the heart does its work of pumping the blood, but that lymphatic pump is you have to make that happen. The heart's not in charge of that fluid. It's just in charge of the blood. Now shift the feet away from the wall for a few moments with the sand if you have it. And then as you bend through the legs, it's going to feel like a little leg press. Be aware what's coming towards you, which is legs. And then reach up to the sand and move it aside or toss it. The foot toss is fun. Hug the legs. Feel that it hugs the ribs, and interesting, it kind of leaves the chest independent. Just feeling that flush of circulation in the rib cage. Yeah, if the feet are tingly, what a good thing, right? You know, you've done some good work. The blood pressure's, almost zero in the feet when they're upside down for a few minutes. Okay, now rock and roll side to side. And then as you roll to one side, feel the shoulders motioning. You've got to find some pressure in your hands to come around to find a seat. But once you come into sitting, crossing through the leg bones, right? Kind of feel that it's maybe more than an ankle crossing, right? It's the calves, the shins, and then feel that elevation of the brain. So but the hands slide on the legs, bring the palm to palm, and let's unite our breath to close practice. So take a deep breath in. And with your out breath, bowing into the peace behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste.